You know, we've seen so many questions in our group about Medicare and especially Medicaid and whether you can qualify for it because do you make too much money?
It's very confusing. So we decided to bring in an expert. We have Scott Stebler from Stebler and Sulak. He's an estate attorney. Thanks so much for being with us. There is a lot of confusion. So let's just start with what is Medicaid?
Right. So Medicaid, when you hear the term Medicaid, it can mean a whole lot of different programs. It's sort of an umbrella of programs in the state of Texas. There's 40 different programs that are actually Medicaid programs in Texas, but for your group in particular, what you're really interested in talking about is what we call long-term care Medicaid or nursing home Medicaid. And that's a specific program that pays for long-term care either in your home or more often in an actual nursing facility.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for those of you who are not in Texas, we are in Texas. That's why
Right.
we're talking about Texas. This kind of applies to every state.
It does.
A little bit different.
It does. There are some nuance. There's some nuance and details that are different in different states. A lot of states are a little bit more, actually more generous with Medicaid benefits than the state of Texas are.
So you just,
Perhaps not surprisingly.
so you just need to figure out what it is in your state and go from there for that situation.
Sure.
Okay. And then as you mentioned too, often when you think of Medicaid, you also think of like, if you have a disabled child, there's so many things. So just remember
Right.
that if you go to do a Google search for Medicaid, it's going to bring up a lot of stuff, but
Yeah.
we're going to focus specifically for this interview on elder
Long-term care Medicaid. What we call long-term Medicaid can be both. Most often it's long-term. It's Medicaid that covers nursing home expense. So for someone whose physical or mental condition has gotten to the point where they need actual skilled nursing, so they satisfy the requirements of actually from a disability standpoint, actually having services provided in a skilled nursing facility. Long-term care Medicaid, though, also includes what we call the Medicaid waiver programs, which in some cases will allow your family member to be served in their actual home and receive Medicaid benefits in their home. But more often than not, for your group, we're talking about skilled nursing home Medicaid.
Yeah, so it's not independent living. It would be assisted living, memory care.
Right. That's a
care,
common
hospice,
misconception.
anything like that.
Assisted living is generally not covered. That is one of the things that there are some differences amongst the states, but in Texas, it's very rare to have assisted living covered by a Medicaid program. In Texas, it's generally you're going to have to reach the level where you actually need skilled nursing.
Yeah.
Okay,
before
gotcha.
Yeah, something to check on.
Yeah, and that is one huge differentiator between Medicare, which doesn't often cover all of that, and I know that we don't want to that'll get super confusing, but just for Medicaid purposes, that's what it covers.
A common misconception is that Medicare will pay for nursing home expense. Medicare only covers nursing home for a very short period of time, and it's a period of rehabilitation. So Medicare will, for example, pay for a nursing home expense for up to 100 days after your parent or loved one has been hospitalized. But it's only for a period of rehabilitation, and it's rare for Medicare to even go as far as 100 days because you have to be showing improvement and that sort of thing. So more often than not, if you had a family member that ended up in a hospital, they had a stroke, they had another physical problem, and now they'd been in a hospital, they've been discharged to a nursing home. Medicare might cover for it for a short period, but at some point Medicare is going to be telling that family, you now need to go private pay, or you need to apply for Medicaid at that point.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's where the Medicaid really makes such a huge difference. It's for that longer term care.
Exactly.
That can get really, really expensive.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But so many people out there are thinking, I make too much money for Medicaid. Isn't that just for the poor and destitute?
Yeah, and that is a common idea, and there are pretty strict asset and resource limitations for Medicaid, but there's a lot of rules and a lot of planning that can go into qualifying someone for Medicaid despite having certain assets. So for example, you hear things that the rules are that you can have no more than $2,000 in countable resources, and the income limit for an individual can be no more than, right now it's $2,382 per month. It's going up next month to $2,532 a month. So a lot of people think, as Mike's saying, that that's their, how would I ever qualify? Well, your house doesn't count as a resource. It's not a countable resource. There's also, if it's a couple and only one person needs to go into a nursing home, there's a way for you to protect certain assets for what is called the community spouse, the spouse that's not having to go into a nursing home. So you can keep up to $130,000 in assets for the spouse that doesn't need to go into a nursing home and still qualify. And this is way beyond the scope of this, but you know, if they are a low income family, there's actually a way to expand the number of assets. If they have a lot of assets but they're lower in income, there's a way to expand the assets that can be protected and still qualify for Medicaid. So it gets very complicated. I think the key thing to understand on that is that if you have a family member who is looking at nursing home, you could talk to an elder law attorney. A good place to find one is the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, NALA.org is the website. And they have a list of a search engine where you can find an elder law attorney in your state
area.
And in your community.
So anywhere across the country.
Yes,
Right.
yes. It's a national organization. Yeah.
And you were mentioning that your house doesn't count. That's up just to a certain amount.
About 600,000, right?
And are those requirements, the savings, what's allowed in your savings account versus what you can have in as income? Is that specific to Texas? Is it different in every state?
There are some differences in Texas. What I just quoted you is sort of the bare minimum.
Got it.
And
okay.
Texas tends to go with the bare minimum, but there are states that are a little bit more generous in terms of what you can retain, and what the spouse that's not, if it's a couple and you have one spouse needing nursing home and one not in the nursing home, some states are a little more generous in what that community spouse can have and still qualify their spouse.
Because I can see that being a really challenging situation where if you have one parent that does need to go into nursing home care or to even assisted living, and they're spending, or skilled nursing, and they're using all of the money to be able to do that, and then you have a parent who's actually pretty healthy who then potentially has no money left when they need help.
Exactly, and that's why those rules are there, to try to save something for the spouse that doesn't need to be in a nursing home at that point and need nursing home level care paid for by Medicaid. It allows you to save us. It's a protected resource amount for the spouse for their future. So you get that a lot where people just think, especially our parents' generation, they think, well, we just got to spend all of our money, and that's just what we do. But there are ways built into the rules to protect those assets. One additional thing, Mike, that I thought I would mention back to your question is in Texas and in a number of other states. Now, an IRA, if the person who you're trying to qualify for Medicaid is applying for Medicaid and they have an IRA that is already at a point where they need to be taking out required minimum distributions, the assets in the IRA itself don't count as a resource. Only the required minimum distribution or the distributions that they are pulling out count as income to them.
But I think that probably scares some people because they think, well, I already get Social Security and then I get a little bit from my 401k or IRA.
Right.
I'm over the $2,500, so what do I do then?
So
I guess I can't qualify. But if you're creative, you can.
There's a fix for that too. It's not a fix for everybody, but there's what's called a qualified income trust, which you can, the simplest way to put it is, if you create this trust, it receives all the sources of income into it to keep the individual under the $2,382 a month in income limit. That money still has to be turned around and used for the nursing home, but you can qualify them for Medicaid and get at least a portion of the Medicaid bill each month paid for by Medicaid. So there is a way to deal with an income problem or an income issue through a qualified income trust.
Does it affect things if it's a married couple still? Kim and I are still elderly, we're still alive. If we're,
or like with your parents.
Yeah, like my mom and dad right now. Yeah. And especially since my mom's living in memory care, my dad's in independent living. separating them like that. I mean, they're still
Yeah.
married, still together, but how does that affect things?
Well, that's, so when there is a couple, I think that there's more of a planning opportunity than when there's not. When you just have an individual, it gets back to those rules I was mentioning about the community spouse. When you have a community spouse, there's certain protections that in terms of income and in terms of resources that you need to look at. There's an opportunity to protect more and keep more and still qualify somebody like your mom for Medicaid.
Yeah.
Is it ever too late to apply for Medicaid?
No, it's
Okay.
it's never too late. A lot of people think that they need to be down to nothing before they apply. So a lot of people will
Spend
just
down.
spend
Because
down.
you hear that term, I need to spend down.
Right.
Right.
And spending down is a planning approach in and of itself, because there are certain ways to spend down. Like, for example, a common way of spending down that benefits your entire family is for the individual who you are applying for Medicaid to spend down by paying off a mortgage, doing repairs on the house. The house is an exempt resource and a non-countable resource for purposes of Medicaid. So it's a way of if you want to pass something on to your kids and you're applying for Medicaid, you can put more of your money into, if you have too much in liquid resources, you can put it into your house.
Yeah.
There might need to be some additional planning with regards to the house in terms of estate planning.
And as long as it's not worth too much.
And as long as it's not worth too much, right? It's the limit is right around $600,000, which in Austin, Texas is a problem because
Right.
most houses are over $600,000.
Right, okay.
So yeah,
So it's almost just making sure that you know that that ask the questions, right? If you have questions, if you think maybe, well, could we qualify?
Yeah.
Could mom or dad qualify? It's asking the questions.
that's right. And there's, like I mentioned, there's elder law attorneys. There's also a number of care managers throughout the country that are very good at Medicaid applications. Here in Austin, we have Accountable Aging, Medicare, folks like that, who know all these rules pretty well too. So,
Okay.
but you want to talk to somebody if you think that there's even a chance that your family member might qualify for Medicaid, or if you just want to plan ahead a little bit, it's a good idea to talk to somebody.
Yeah, definitely ask those questions and don't eliminate yourself. Rule yourself
Yeah,
out.
'cause
There
then
could be somebody right now calling to see if they can qualify. Because that's what you have to do. You have to ask the questions to find out.
So thanks so much for sharing this expertise. It definitely shows us that there is a lot to this. There's lots of nuances, and you really do need help probably to figure this all out.
Agreed.
All right, thanks so much.
All right.
And thanks for watching, and we hope that you will let us know if you have other topics you'd like us to cover.